I'd like to welcome you to my channel. In this video, I want to share my personal experience and talk honestly about what, in my opinion, you should absolutely never do when you travel to Turkey. Over the past 13 years of living here, working in different cities and traveling all around the country, I've seen the same mistakes repeated over and over again, season after season. You'd think people would learn from others' experiences, but every year, someone ends up in a situation that could have been easily avoided if they knew a few simple things. I know that some of these tips may sound obvious to you, and perhaps, if you've been traveling for a long time, you think you already know everything. But I can assure you, even experienced travelers sometimes forget the basics when they're relaxed and feel too comfortable. And it's usually in those moments when something goes wrong. That's why I decided to create this detailed video, to share not only the rules but also the stories behind them, because real examples make it easier to understand why each point matters. Let's start with something that sounds trivial, but is probably the most important advice I can give you. Never trust that drivers will stop just because you have a green light. In Turkey, pedestrian crossings and traffic lights do exist, of course, but if you expect that everyone will slow down the second you step onto the road, you're risking your health. I have personally witnessed countless situations where tourists simply start crossing, looking straight ahead without checking left or right, and a car comes speeding past them. Sometimes the driver will honk. Sometimes they won't even slow down. That's why I always say, here, crossing the street is not a matter of rights. It's a matter of vigilance. You need to look in every direction, even when you think it's absolutely safe. And if you decide to rent a car yourself, remember that local drivers can be unpredictable. They often change lanes without using turn signals. They don't always stop at red lights. And scooters are a separate story. You'll see them weaving through traffic from every side, sometimes even driving against the flow. I've been driving here for years and still, I never fully relax behind the wheel. So please, whether you're a pedestrian or a driver, be extremely careful. Another thing that I see happening again and again is how tourists speak about Turkey in front of locals. I want you to understand something important. Turkish people are very patriotic. They have a strong connection to their country, their culture, and their history. And while they themselves might criticize political decisions, complain about the economy, or discuss social problems, they do not appreciate it when foreigners do the same, especially if you do it in a dismissive or condescending tone. Even a seemingly innocent comment like, "Why is it so disorganized here?" or "Everything feels dirty," can be perceived as offensive. One time, I was sitting in a cafe in Antalya, and at the next table, a group of tourists started loudly discussing how primitive everything seemed to them. I could see the discomfort on the faces of the Turkish staff working there. One waiter, who spoke excellent English, later told me how much it hurt him to hear such things. So my advice is simple. If you don't have anything good to say, it's better to keep those opinions to yourself until you're alone. This small act of respect can save you a lot of trouble and embarrassment. I also want to mention something that a lot of people forget. Never assume that people around you don't understand your language. Turkey is one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. Millions of people visit every year, and many locals speak at least basic English, Russian, or German. I've witnessed plenty of awkward situations when tourists thought no one was listening, made unflattering comments about staff, and then realized too late that every word had been understood. For example, I once saw a couple discussing how they planned to negotiate the price of a souvenir in a shop. They were speaking in Russian, thinking no one would understand. But the shop owner had spent years working with tourists and knew exactly what they were saying. You can imagine how uncomfortable it got when he answered them in perfect Russian. So please, never assume you're not being understood. It's much safer to act as though everyone can follow what you say. Another piece of advice I consider crucial. Don't ever insult or threaten locals or other tourists. I know sometimes situations get tense. Maybe someone cuts you in line or you have an argument with a taxi driver, but open aggression or threats can get you into serious legal trouble. Turkish law allows the police to detain you or fine you if the other person files a complaint, and there are witnesses who confirm what happened. In extreme cases, you could even face temporary detention or deportation. I once saw a man in the airport shouting insults at the ground staff because his flight was delayed. He thought he was just expressing frustration, but security took it very seriously, and he ended up having to explain himself to the police for hours. Let's talk about all-inclusive hotels. Many people think that if they paid for unlimited food, they can take as much as they want and bring it wherever they please. But in Turkey, it is considered bad manners to carry food out of the restaurant. I know this can seem strange. After all, you paid for it, right? But culturally, it's frowned upon. Every year I see tourists who, after dinner, pile plates high with fruit or desserts, wrap everything in napkins, and carry it out to the pool or their rooms. Most of the time, the staff won't say anything to you directly. They're used to it. But trust me, they will notice, and they will not see it as acceptable behavior. There is one exception. If someone in your family is sick and cannot come to the restaurant, you can always ask the staff for permission to take food to the room. In those cases, people are very understanding. But under normal circumstances, it's better to just eat at the restaurant. Another important rule that sometimes surprises visitors is about alcohol. In Turkey, it's forbidden by law to drink alcoholic beverages in public places. That means no open bottles of beer on the street, no cocktails on the park bench, no wine on the beach promenade. Most tourists know this, but occasionally I still see people walking around town with a bottle in hand. If you're lucky, the police might give you a warning and ask you to put it away. But if you're unlucky, or if you're behaving rudely, you could be fined. And if alcohol leads to aggressive behavior or public disturbances, you could end up spending the night in a police station. So my advice is simple. If you want to drink, do it at a bar, a restaurant, or in your hotel room. On a related note, let's talk about smoking. Years ago, smoking was allowed almost everywhere in Turkey, even indoors. But today, the rules have changed completely. Smoking inside restaurants, cafes, and any public buildings is strictly prohibited. If you light up in a closed space, you can be fined around 30 euros. Staff are obliged to warn you, and if you ignore the warning, they can call the police. So always look for designated smoking areas and be mindful of the rules. There's also one more topic that is absolutely not a joke here. Respect for national symbols. Never, under any circumstances, should you do anything that can be seen as insulting the Turkish flag, anthem, coat of arms, or portraits of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. His image is everywhere, in offices, schools, shops, even on money. Several years ago, there was an incident where a tourist wiped his nose with a banknote showing Ataturk's portrait. It caused a public outrage and he was prosecuted. For actions like this, the punishment can be from 1 to 3 years in prison. Even if you think it's funny or harmless, never risk it. I'm telling you all of this not to scare you, but to help you avoid awkward or difficult situations. Turkey is a fantastic country, hospitable, full of incredible food, amazing history, and warm people. If you show respect, stay aware of your surroundings, and follow the local customs, your trip will be much more enjoyable and relaxed. If you have your own stories or experiences to share, please leave a comment below. I'm always interested to hear how other travelers see this beautiful country and what lessons they've learned. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video to the end. I hope my advice will help you feel confident and safe wherever you go. I've been traveling for 13 years, and I can say with certainty that respecting the culture and being attentive to details always makes a difference. I wish you wonderful trips, only positive emotions, and bright memories that will stay with you for years to come. See you soon in the next video.